It's Saturday. It's the Saturday Salon. With me today, I have Michelle, and I'm just gonna pin my dear co-host Michelle Vicker. And if you have been sleeping under a rock and you don't know who she is, then you really deeply missed out. I've been co-hosting with Michelle for 6+ years, every single Saturday, mostly. And Michelle is an author of 2 world best-selling books. Michelle, if people don't know you, which I don't think is the case, how would you describe yourself besides being a badass, an author, educator, world leader, and whatnot?
Well, one of our themes today is going to be not fitting into a box, and
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty appropriate. I've been described as an economist, political scientist, anthropologist, sociologist, psychologist, historian, and none of those is 100% true, and none of them is 100% not true. But my current obsession is risk and taking artistic risks. I think is going to be a great theme because Lera, nobody personifies that more than Lera does. But I'm a strategic advisor. I'm an educator. I'm a policy. I call it not so wonk. I try to make policy accessible to lots of people. And some of the things that Lera's going to be talking about today are related to policy choices. And I just absolutely love the way art and music can help people to connect with issues emotionally that they might not be
Mm.
able to do just with the boring tools that nerdy social scientists and economists like to use. So we're just absolutely, I'm delighted to be here and so excited to share Lera's work with the world and Raphael as well, who's been so incredibly supportive of her and is a wonderful person and musician in his own right.
It's going to be a really wonderful next 1 hour. Michelle, before we hand over to Lera and we'll start the interview as such, I'm just curious. As you know, I'm not very well educated, unlike you. Former street child, foster care, whatnot. People like me, we can perfectly fine live an entire life without ever going to an opera, ever hearing even one line of Mozart or anything, or going to a museum even. How did you get introduced to art and music and all of that? You got it through education, right? Sophisticated education and your network.
I did. I was lucky. I've always been in private schools. My father
Mm,
is a private school educator, so I've been
mm.
very, very lucky that way. And my mother has been a music teacher, and so there was always music in the household. And
Wow.
actually, I just found they moved into a senior home, and she gave me a bunch of my artwork from when I was quite small. I was amazed that she
Okay.
kept all of it. Obviously, I didn't choose that as a career, uh, but I think there's so many
Mm,
efforts to bring art and music to people who might
mm.
not be able to access them, particularly when they're children. And I think it's so important for growth, and I think creativity is so important to anything we do, which is why Lyra is such an inspiration.
Okay, you know what? Let's dive into it. You and I have been jamming for 6 years, and we've had all sorts of famous people on this podcast. And today's guest, you know her very well, right? Should just dive in. Let me hear how you know today's guest and why she's so awesome, and then let's hand it over to her.
Yeah, well, I met Lyra. I don't think I should probably say how many years ago anymore. When we were both young global leaders, an amazing community of the World Economic Forum. But I can say I was still living in New York, not too far from her and Raphael, a fellow dog lover. I was so lucky to see her perform at Lincoln Center, and if memory serves, one of the pieces was inspired by a fire in that apartment. And more recently, I moved to Chicago 12 years ago, which tells you a little bit how long I've known her. But she performed here in Chicago, and I was just amazed. What a treat to see her perform. But I also have right here. I don't know if she remembers this. She gifted me a book quite some time ago, Excess of Being, which is a collection of art and a number of just sort of aphorisms, just randomly opening a page. You don't need to hear the song to know that it is sounding. I've actually picked it up again recently for this and have been looking through and I could pick this up every day for some inspiration. So I put it right next to my desk. It's a poet, an artist, a sculptor, a composer, a conductor, and I'm just so honored to know her as a friend and also Raphael, who I've gotten to know along with her. And there just is such an amazing partnership, teamwork. So yeah, I'm really excited, and we have a little video to introduce her.
Bach is zonder enige twijfel een van de allerbeste componisten ter wereld.
Ze is een pianist, een componist, dirigent.
Naast componeren kan ze ook fantastisch schrijven, beeldhouden, schilderen.
Vele werken, van kleinschalig tot groot symfonisch, van heel intiem voor één piano tot grote koorwerken.
Het Lera Auerbach Festival is een uitstekend moment om een van de belangrijkste componisten van vandaag echt grondig te leren kennen en te ervaren wat voor moois ze heeft gemaakt in één pakket.
Zij weet het publiek te betoveren. Het is alsof je in een andere wereld terechtkomt.
Dus er verschuilt altijd een heftige emotionele lading achter die noten en de rijkdom die daaruit spreekt. Het spat van papier af.
Bij haar muziek gaat het echt over het nu. En dat hoor je ook in de akkoorden. Zij zoekt in haar muziek. Want je herkent akkoorden wel uit het verleden, maar ze zijn op zo'n manier gecomponeerd dat ze echt over het nu gaan.
Een ongelooflijk creatieve persoon die nooit uitgepraat is als componist.
Iemand die ook bezig is met de maatschappelijke vraagstukken die spelen in onze samenleving.
Something needs to be done to protect this wonder.
Het werken met Lera is ontzettend veel eisend. Zij is ontzettend veel eisend.
No, it's not that.
Dus heeft ze hier bijvoorbeeld, het passage needs to be more French. Want de zaak is whatever that means. Ze heeft ook vaak hele duistere ideeën bij de muziek. In een bepaald stuk zei ze op een gegeven moment tegen mij, je moet echt het gevoel hebben dat je aan de rand van de afgrond staat.
Dat de zangers op het puntje van hun stoel zullen zitten, dat blijft met twijfel.
Vaak bij hedendaagse componisten is het zo dat er maar één stuk van geprogrammeerd wordt.
We zien Lera in de kamermuziek, zelf achter de piano, dirigerend.
En op deze manier kan je de veelzijdigheid komen te waarderen van iemand die zoveel betekent in de nieuwe muziek vandaag. Bijzonder is dat het de 50ste verjaardag wordt van Lera Auerbach.
In het festival had ook in New York of Berlijn of Wenen plaats kunnen vinden. Maar ik vind het heel leuk dat Lera er juist voor gekozen heeft om hier haar verjaardag te vieren met ons.
En wat absoluut gaat gebeuren, dat je als iemand anders die zaal uitstapt en dat je de zaal in bent.
Beautiful, Lera. I'm gonna pin you here. Welcome you live from Oxford today. What are you doing in Oxford, and how are you doing? And thank you for being here today. We're so excited.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Soulaima. Thank you, Michelle, for having me here and sharing ideas. I'm today finding myself in Oxford because I'm in the middle of a book tour. I just had readings of presentations of my new novel, which was just published last month. So I was in Berlin, in Vienna for book readings, and tonight will be in Oxford. So as soon as we finish, I will run to do the presentation. And then next week in New York, in Manhattan, Brooklyn, and in New Jersey. So, and actually, I was thinking that this book it does connect to our theme today, the theme of borderless creativity, because the book there are two lines of text in the book. One is the world from the perception of a child, and as children, we are all creators. We all create, and this world is also united with some of the mythological images, such as Adam and Eve. There is a wanderer who travels the world trying to understand what is happiness. there is a young wolf Mowgli who wanders also the world trying to understand what does it mean to be human. There is a character called Lady Separation. So this world of a child, which is so full of this mythology, is juxtaposed by the world of an adult who feels there was something missing, something that perhaps was there in childhood, but somehow in this noisy chaos of the world got missing. And in a way, the novel is an attempt to find what is it, what stays, what's this intangible essence that is so important to preserve and to carry forward. So it connects to the concept of creativity. And also, the novel has a musical form. It has a form of 24 preludes and 24 postludes. And the theme of preludes and postludes is so important. So this is one of the reasons why I'm in Oxford. The other reason is, that actually directly connects to where I am right now. I just came from the performance of my ballet, The Little Mermaid, in Salzburg. And Little Mermaid, I wrote music. John Neumeier did the choreography and staging and costumes. This ballet is almost 20 years old. It keeps on swimming. And it was wonderful to see it in Salzburg in this gigantic stage with Hamburg Ballet on tour and Vienna Symphony Orchestra. But the theme of this ballet also directly relates to our subject because it's, let me tell you, it's not Disney. When we say Little Mermaid, everybody thinks Disney, but it's actually going back to Hans Christian Andersen. And if you remember his fairy tale, it's incredibly tragic and very sophisticated because Little Mermaid is someone who doesn't fit any pre-existing forms. So it's a being who doesn't feel she's gorgeous in this world under the sea, but she doesn't want to stay there. So she becomes human. She's constantly transforming herself, but as a human, she doesn't fit into the society of humans. And ultimately, in Hans Christian Andersen, she transforms herself into this incredible being of the air with the purpose of healing others. So it's a very beautiful, constant transformation, but ultimately a very, very profound story. And in some ways, it was also, people say that it was the true autobiography of Hans Christian Andersen, who himself didn't fit into Danish society of that time. And which is funny because he actually wrote a novel called The Fairy Tale of My Life, which is supposed to be his true autobiography, but it is not. It is how he wished his life would be. But The Little Mermaid represents really himself. And what's special also in this ballet, that it becomes about relationship between creator, Hans Christian Andersen, and you will see, I will play a little fragment. You will see him and his creation. So as a creator, Hans Christian Andersen, he would like to warn Little Mermaid of tragic consequences, that her decisions will cause her a lot of pain, and he wants her to stop. But she has the will of her own, so she is free to make her own decisions. So we all realize how important creativity in any profession. But of course, for an artist, it's really a matter of life or death, because music begins in silence, and poetry starts with a blank page. Painting starts with a blank canvas. And of course, these incredible possibilities can be both. They can be inspiring, but they can also be frightening. how do you go forward, and how do you find creativity, ability in this noisiness of everyday existence? How do you, in a way, tune yourself so you yourself can become a vessel of creation? And what happens if what you do doesn't fit the pre-existing norms or expectations? And the answer that I found maybe twofold. One is not to follow the good advice of your professors, well-wishers, parents, and so on, but to always ask your inner calling. Is this advice in alignment with the truth that only you may know? Because as much as it may come from good place, but it may also come with pre-existing limiting beliefs, pre-existing fears, and it can be passed on to you. So you yourself may find yourself in cages that maybe are not appropriate for what you need to do. And the other concept is, I call it creative procrastination. So my friends often think that I'm a workaholic. But the truth, please don't tell anyone, but I'm exceptionally lazy. So I'm constantly procrastinating what I really need to be doing. But because I procrastinate with another form of art, for example, things get done at the end. So, and we'll come back to this concept later on, but it's again wish to remain free. And I want to share with you a little bit of the story. So my story starts in Chelyabinsk, which is it used to be a closed city in Soviet Union in South Urals. And I was very fortunate to be born in a family that really valued art. My mom was my first music teacher, and here she is. I guess I'm singing, and she's accompanying me. And I started music school, and the first thing that I realized is that my piano teacher, so it was a different piano teacher, when he found out that I started composing music very, very early on. And for me, it was a way to escape practicing scales and doing all of the boring stuff. So when he realized that I'm writing music, he got very upset. So because he said, here I am spending the best years of my life, so you will be a concert pianist, and what I don't want to hear anything about it. And this, and he was a wonderful teacher, by the way. So this team of teachers really wanted me to focus on only one aspect. It became a leitmotif in a way of my life because everyone who wished me well wanted me to focus. So I remember the story with this teacher. I came after the summer, and that was a very special summer in my life because my composition teacher was commissioned to write an opera. So I was 12, around 12. And he had other priorities and he couldn't make the deadline. So he jokingly said, well, maybe they should have commissioned you. But I took his words very literally. So next lesson, I brought him the whole plan for the opera, plan for libretto, leitmotifs. And he said, you know what, I will call the director. So that was the summer when I worked day and night and I wrote my very first opera, which was actually closer to a musical, I think. And I was very excited to share it with my piano teacher, except when I did, his face just went rigid and he was like, I don't want to hear anything about it. So, and that was a valuable lesson to learn. But piano always for me was, here is my drawing of a piano as Pegasus, because to me piano was always like this winged horse that carries you into the unknown. And so I started actually composing when I was 4 years old, and it was the desire to tell story. My mom would tell me stories before going to bed, and I would come to a piano, I would improvise a story. And I remember one day I improvised a story that I really liked, but then my mom came back from work and I wanted to play it for her, but I couldn't because I forgot it. So, and I was crying and I was very upset because it was really cool story. And and my mom just said, "Why don't you write it down?" And I was like, "What do you mean write down?" And she said, "Well, you can write words. So just the same way you have a musical idea, take a pencil, notes, just write it down. It's simple." So this is why I started writing music at the age of 4. Which was a great gift, because for me this process of notating musical ideas was as natural. I mean, I thought really everyone can do it. If we can write words, why can't we write music? So yeah, so this were my first opuses. And then what happened, again, going against the norm or boxes or whatever it is. So I had one of the teachers in the music school who quickly recognized that, yes, I need actually professional advice because maybe I can be a composer. But in the school level, there was nobody who would be teaching composition. It was only at the college level. So, and I was 8 years old. So he went to talk to this professor, composition professor, and he said, "Absolutely not. I cannot work with children. I never did. I will never do it. So absolutely not. Don't even talk to me about it." And then he said, "Well, but would you mind if she just observes the lessons you give to others?" She was very polite, quiet girl. She will just sit in the corner. Nobody will notice her. You will not notice. She will not bother. Just let her sit. And he said, "Well, okay, if she peeps, she's out." So, and I remember going to college, and I was a very small child. So I remember the desks were very high. So I was kind of like sitting like this, only my eyes. And 1 month passed by, another month, and he never acknowledged my presence. But one time he had a masterclass. He had all his students, and they were all very serious people in their 20s. And one of his star students, he gave her a theme, and he said, "Improvise a fugue." And she did, and he was very proud and happy about it. And all of a sudden, he noticed me in the corner, and he said, "And what do you think about it?" And I said, "Well, it was very well done, but it can be so much better." And his eyebrows went up, and he said, "Really? Maybe you can demonstrate us. How can it be better?" So I improvised the fugue for him and for them. And I guess he was impressed, because he went to the director of the college and he asked if they can make an exception and enroll me in the college level to study composition. So here, this is our class with me in the middle. And this is us improvising together in front of the class.
Oh.
So
To share with people that, when we were prepping for this a few minutes ago, that you and Raphael were testing the sound, and you kept asking, "How is it?" And Soulaima and I were like, "That's great." They're like, "No, you were both. No, it could be better." So you're still like that. But I see this picture of you with all these, much older students and your teacher. And what was it like for you being a prodigy? I mean, I hate that word, but you know what I mean. How did you deal with that? Were you just an old soul, or did you feel like you stuck out, or how did you deal with that emotionally?
I never felt I wasn't treated like a prodigy or wunderkind. If anything, my teachers were more harsh on me because the expectations were quite high from them. So, but I was never treated in any pampering, special, celebratory way, which was a gift because it can be a dangerous place to be. But at the same time, I always felt as an outsider. So because, as you can imagine, I wasn't hanging out with the 20 and there were some 30-year-olds in this class. I mean, it socially, there was very little interaction other than in the classroom. So I, in a way, felt a little bit like an outsider of any environment because sometimes with the kids of my own age, I loved playing tricks, and sometimes I would get into trouble. And like I remember running around the college, like exploring places and getting into trouble. But it was also sometimes they were not necessarily interested in what I was reading. So it was a strange combination. But I would say I was so focused on the art itself, on books. I was so immersed into this wonderful atmosphere of my family was surrounded, the apartment was surrounded in books. So every moment that I was not playing, I was reading, and I was very, very much living this life. So it was, I would say it had both. It had certainly a lot of positives, but it also had its own challenges, like anything else in life. So, but of course, I mean, knowing now what you know, of course, it kind of wasn't enough to be in the college with composition and piano in school, also in the regular school, which I had to attend. And I'm not going to go into that, but I also went to ice skating school, which was a big deal in Russia. But I never felt piano was just enough for me. So I managed to convince the school administration to let me study flute, which again was against the rules. The rules, it was a professional music school. You were supposed to do only one thing. So you cannot study more than one instrument. It's different departments. So, but somehow they let me, and I studied flute for many years. In fact, when I came to United States, I still was giving concerts as a flutist. And of course, that wasn't enough, right? So I loved violin, so I convinced them to let me study violin. So it was kind of a very strange existence. It was all in different levels, different, but somehow it worked. Here and in retrospect, it was the best knowledge I could receive for future as a composer because that gave me physical understanding of woodwind instrument, of all wind instruments, of string instrument, which I wouldn't have if I only stayed with piano. So it was invaluable experience. For me, the world of books have been as important as the world of music. And the love of books came from my grandfather, whom you see here, whose life, he was a poet, and his life was this library. He was collecting it, and there is a really funny and amazing story. Maybe we will bring it up later on, how I ended up with his library in America, and it's also connects to Raphael. But this love of books, probably it came from him, and from the very start, writing was so important. And also there was one more very special person in my life. This is my nanny Mariana. Now at that time it was very people didn't have babysitters. We're talking about Soviet Union, no babysitters. And she, it was one of these gifts from life. My grandmother was sitting with me when I was 7 months old in a park, and my grandmother had very bad legs. It was very difficult for her to be with a baby. She talked to a lady sitting next to her and asked if she could come for a weekend. And that was Mariana, who appeared in my life and stayed with us, became member of the family, and she died when I was 15 years old. So and my last book that I wrote in English, Forever Music, is dedicated to her. And this book is about a child growing up in music, little poems, like little memory snaps. So, and it is about her too. And this brings me to so this is my way of procrastinating, creative procrastination. So if you get a deadline in music, please, that means that, I will be writing a book. And if I have a deadline for a book, it means I will prepare a visual art exhibition. So, but somehow things end up being done at the end. This book is very unusual. It's poems for children about orchestra, and it's titled A is for Oboe. So it's written together with my friend Marilyn Nelson, and published by Random House as a picture book. And there is a fantastic audio recording by Thomas Kvastov that also has musical illustrations for each instrument, so children can really get excited about the orchestra.
Yeah, I have to say, I got that as a gift for my nephew, and they absolutely loved it. And I love your procrastination story. In fact, I wish I were musical, because I procrastinate too, but it's only from writing one thing to writing another thing, and you have so many different art forms. And Ida, I just wanted to ask you about switching from from writing to drawing to sculpting to music. Do you feel like you're a different person in each of those modes, or what's the difference for you between being each different type of artist? And I'm getting a sense of that they all connect to each other, but how do you go from one box to another? We've talked so much about people being in boxes and you not being able to fit into them.
Well, that's an excellent question, because yes, of course, there are these three lines of work in my life, which is music, literature, and visual art. But there are also subdivisions in each one of them, because in our age of specialization, it's not normal for a pianist to be a composer, or for a composer to be also a conductor. So you kind of supposed to specialize in one. And the same happened with literature, because when I first started getting published, my publisher said, well, you need to make up your mind. Are you writing poetry or you are writing fiction? Because you cannot possibly publish both, because it's a different readership. So please make up your mind. And of course, I couldn't make up my mind. And to make things much worse, later on, I started writing in English. So now having two different instruments. And the same thing happened with visual art. Of course, I couldn't just stay with painting. I had to do sculpture. And to answer your question, they play a little bit different parts in my life. So visual art, I say that I sculpt or I create paintings instead of going to psychologist or psychiatrist. it's it's much better expenditure of resources.
It saves you a lot of money too, I bet.
Yes, and sometimes even makes money. But what it does, it really gives form to the feelings, to concerns, to anxieties, to whatever the inner turmoil is. It gives it form, and it once you have form, you can deal with it. if we are dealing with something unnameable, like if your anxiety, you cannot give it form, it's overwhelming. But if you give it form, and the most visual way is actually visual art. It can, in a way, if you draw your monsters out, you can deal with them, and also it allows a different perspective on what you're working on long term. So, for example, a lot of my visual art deals directly connects with operas, with symphonies, because to write an opera can take you 3 years, and so during that time, what happens is the characters from the opera start taking shape, your own fears, perhaps your own hopes. So all of it starts being realized through visual art, and it gives it helps me with the perspective. So the moment I feel somehow not fully aligned, or I feel stuck in some way, I try to approach it from a different art form, because the moment I do it, it brings back this freshness, or it brings maybe some surprising view that I didn't think about.
Yeah, thank
So,
you for
so
that.
here is just a bunch of books that I published, and this brings me actually to, that's a good link to the next work, because it connects to YGL community directly. It's a symphony, my fourth symphony, titled Arctica. And it also exists in different forms, because, of course, I was creating artworks and writing my diary through, but the main body is the symphony. And it came from one conversation I had with another YGL, Enric Zala, who doesn't need any introduction. He's legendary, and he saves this planet in the quite literal way. And Enric asked me, is there any symphony about the Arctic region? And there was something about Antarctica, but there was no major symphonic work related to Arctica. So we both were like, oh, it needs to exist. So this is how Arctica came to be. And this is work that changed my life. And I'm so grateful. I've been changed by this project. And I'm so blessed to have a council of Arctic elders advising me on this work, on the history, on languages. I'm very, very fortunate. I remember I had one time I had this experience when my studio had a fire, and I think Michelle remembers the time in New York. And it was, in a way, it was time when I had to stop and reconsider where am I in life? It's when something like this happens and you lose everything, including your manuscripts, including your family photo albums and library that you saw. Everything was burned, and it was one of these moments to stop and think. And when I had this moment, I realized actually something very beautiful, because what I realized is that a lot of my childhood dreams have been realized, and not only realized, but the realization was much more magical than what I envisioned. For example, as a child growing up in the closed city of Chelyabinsk, with no hope actually getting out. But of course, I was dreaming of Carnegie Hall one day to play on this legendary stage. And when it actually happened, it was so much more beautiful than I imagined, because it was together with Gidon Kremer, who was one of my heroes. He's one incredible violinist, and with the orchestra playing a piece for violin, piano, and orchestra that I wrote. So it was just this kind of magical feeling. But I also realized that's where visual art came from, because even though I would draw a lot as a child, I never gave it a chance seriously as an adult, and because this was 20 years ago. So, and because I was homeless at that time with my studio gone, I was fortunate to be invited to different artist residencies to stay in the meantime. And I thought, why I never gave it a serious go? And here I'm surrounded by incredible artists. I'm just going to go and ask them to educate me what words, what brush to use. So really, I was so fortunate because everybody was so generous and happy to share their art secrets and so on. And since then, the art became such an important part of creative process and really inseparable. And the other thing that I was doing as a child a lot, and then there was a period of time that I actually consciously decided not to go into that direction, even though I had all the training, was conducting. So studying in Russia, I was seriously trained as a conductor too. That was part of the education. But then my publisher at that time advised me to concentrate on creating a large body of work that other conductors can perform before going on stage as a conductor. But I remember myself as a 5-year-old, conducting and the piece that I remember was, I love Tchaikovsky's symphonies. So I would, put a record and then conduct this imaginary orchestra. And again, of course, everyone would say, why do you need conducting? You have so much going on. So why? And but I must say that for the last 10 years, it has been an incredibly important part, and it's a chance for me also to give to others, because what I can see in the score of regular repertoire, I look at it through composer's eyes. So what I can see in the score and share with musicians is an interpretation that perhaps is quite different than the ones that got, somebody did and then somebody else repeated and somebody else repeated. Because I always examine standard repertoire, what was the message of the composer and how it was communicated. So for me, conducting became really this magical ability to shape music, to communicate directly with musicians, with
Makes
orchestra.
so much sense. I remember when you were in Chicago, you'd spent a couple of days, working on, I think it was the US premiere, and
Mhm.
you'd been working, directly with
Yes.
the musicians. And I think that's just so amazing that the conducting isn't so separate. But I wanted to go back to something you said a couple minutes ago, actually talking about the loss in the fire. And I know I talked with you guys when you had loss by flood, after a hurricane. But you mentioned in that context, being a little girl in Russia and not being able to leave, and of course you emigrated to the United States. And I think of immigration as such a huge experience of loss. So I thought it was really interesting that those came up in the same set of comments. So I wanted to ask you about the immigration experience and how that has influenced your art.
Well, there is a very, very exciting story which I probably will not tell right now. Maybe, maybe at the end of how it all happened. But it was, let's put it this way, it wasn't something planned, well thought out. And I was 17. And essentially, I was coming for 10 days to US. It was part of this cultural exchange where so I was sent to give some performances, and I was supposed to be back 10 days later. It was still Soviet Union. So what's important to understand for context, it was in 1991, before Soviet Union fell apart. And it was um, June 91. And unexpectedly, so that's part of the story which I'm not telling right now, maybe later, I was offered to start studying in the conservatory in New York, start in September. But the big question was, do I come back to Soviet Union and then try to come back in September, which seemed absolutely undoable because even the day of my departure from Soviet Union, you were supposed to have exit visas, the permission to exit. And I didn't have that exit visa until 2 hours before the flight. So until 2 hours before the flight, I did not know if I will be on that plane or not. And also coming from the closed city, Chelyabinsk, it's a place where there were a lot of nuclear experiments in Soviet Union. So it was this very kind of secured place. So, and even realistically, my parents both teachers, so even for them to come up with rubles necessary for a flight, it would be so. The question was when I was offered to start studying in September, do I return to Russia or not? Because I was 17, I didn't know anyone in New York except people I met that day. I didn't have English. I didn't have any money. I didn't have any relatives. And I had absolutely no idea about anything. That's the truth, because growing up in Chelyabinsk, America, it was like going to the moon, you know. I think I was in a restaurant once before that. So that just to tell you how clueless I was about anything, really. And very protective childhood. So my parents were a very kind of close, protective family. But so what I did, I called my parents and I asked them, what do I do? And my parents were heroes in this story because I never forget what they said. And again, I've never traveled anywhere alone. Never, ever. So they said, you know, it will be, whatever you decide, whether you decide to come back or you decide to stay, will be the right decision. But it has to be your decision, because this is the decision that will forever change your life. Which I think was such a brave, incredible thing to say.
And I know you lost your father recently.
Yes, unfortunately, yes. So, and so I'm forever grateful, because, of course, if they would say, no, you return, I would have returned. And, of course, looking back, I realize how the things could have gone very differently, and how fortunate and grateful I am that the life has been so generous to me. And so of course it was also the right age to because I was at 17, I already had taken in the good part that Russia at that time could offer, the culture, the literature, the education, the musical training. So I already had this, but I was still young enough to be completely open to what the world had to offer. And New York was, there is no other place in the world to better than that to offer all the different approaches, to challenge my perspectives, to enrich them, to introduce me to completely different forms of thinking, behaving, culture, language, everything. So again, I was very fortunate it happened at that age.
Lera, I actually have a question, if I may. I'm writing a new book that is coming out in December on actually it's called the 8% rule, that sometimes you just have to take a jump. You will never have the full picture of making the right decision. So you might as well just go for it. Is this the way you still live your life, Lera? Like the way you said with being in New York, you had absolutely no clue, but you dare to stay anyway. Do you still live your life like that? Because you still do things that you don't fully yet understand how to do, but you have a faith in the process and that you will figure it out. What drives you in that? Do you dare to be an amateur, right? I mean, allow me to explain. Like like
Yeah.
even today we're doing live first time, and you just laughed and said, "Let's do it." Is that a muscle of yours? Is that a mentality? Is it a skill? Is that what drives you? The curiosity, the fearlessness, the courage? What is it?
It's an excellent question, Soulaima, because I feel like this every day in a way. And this is why I mentioned the power of a blank page or blank canvas, because we have to take risks. We have to jump in, because until we do that, we may never, you, you may never be prepared enough. And I think we, as artists, we're all perfectionists, which is so essential and so important, but it can also be hindering. So, for example, I do know one very, very promising young composer who went to school at the same time with me. And at that time, I thought, well, this person would definitely have a great career as a composer, but actually he stopped composing, and because nothing he did was ever good enough for him, so he just stopped going at it. And I think there is a very fine balance, because why do we do what we do? And I think when you believe in your vision is so much bigger than you. You're not doing it for yourself. We are not creating art for ourselves. No, it's giving form to something very intangible, something very fragile, something that needs to be expressed, but it can only be expressed through you if you go for it. If you, in a way, you need to remove your ego. So sometimes if I give master classes to composers, I always say, if you catch yourself at a thought, what would my professor think about this? Or what would music critics write about this piece? And there is a wonderful book by Nicholas Lanimsky about all the bad reviews that absolutely great masterpieces have received, which just shows you what all creators have to deal with, and but this fire inside of you is greater than your ego. You have to remove it, and maybe sometimes you will fall, and if you're going to fall, choose a high ladder to fall, so make it make it more significant. So yes, so risk taking is essential, and we all have fears as human beings. It's part of who we are. We all have insecurities, but it is very important to remember why we do what we do, and that it's not about us, it's about something else. And I think once you're aligned, you just jump.
And Lera, you have received all the awards that any artist can receive, all of them.
There is some left. Yeah.
Okay. I like that. But you won pretty much everything. Tell me, you probably get very excited when you get celebrated. You get the award, and everyone is clapping, and you have your beautiful dress, and you go back home with Raphael in the evening, and you have a cup of tea. Do you think about that award the next day, or you move on and then you go for a new goal in life?
Soulaima, you're painting a very romantic picture of my life. I wish it was so. I wish that would happen every well, not every day, but at least every month. No, no, I'm afraid the life is not as glamorous as it may look from outside. And it's also part of the reality, actually, because what we see from other people, we see their successes, their high moments. What we don't see, the tears, we don't see the frustration, we don't see everyday life challenges that life throws at you. And the struggle between combining the very kind of everyday matters with you need to be in the space where you can truly be creative. And so usually after I finish one work, I immediately focus on what's next. So, and what the next work requires, whether it's a painting, whether it's a book, whether it's music. And in a way, I have to make new jump into unknown, because every time I start, I don't want to be recycling the same ideas. It's tempting, but it also means to the end. And it's important for me every time I face this white page, I approach it as I don't know anything. I'm here to be the vessel for the work I have a vision of, or some abstract concept to be realized. And I have to invent how to do it. So, and I think you're absolutely right. It definitely requires this fearlessness and facing we all have fears, so it's not like I cannot say that I'm a fearless person, but it requires courage to face them and to make the new jump.
Lea, I know you have more in your presentation, but I also want to ask you, since you lost everything in that fire and you moved out of Soviet Union, and you've been a immigrant, and you still are, and you're moving and you're constantly on the road, do you think that's an advantage for you, that you are not attached to one home, one identity, that you can play with life and wonder, and so more of that creates more creativity, and you not having to stay in one place? And you already lost pretty much everything that you own. You have rebuilt, of course, but do you think that mattress moment on the floor, you starting over, kind of gave you even more fearlessness, in lack of better word?
Well, that moment of losing everything in fire was definitely very important, and it certainly liberated me in some ways, because at that time I knew exactly. I thought I knew. I thought I knew who I am. I thought I knew where I live, what I have, and what's in front of me. And what I realized, that I know absolutely nothing. And it was a time, because that fire happened, that I started seriously going into the visual art, which became such an important healing part of my existence, and still is. And in fact, if I didn't lose that studio in New York, I would have never had space to create art, because in New York it's quite difficult. But it also, the question of belonging is, of course, a very important question, and I wish I knew the answer. I've learned to think about it, that my home is inside me, is in the art. It is in the circle of friends, in people whom I love. That regardless of where I am in the world, this part is always with me. Having said so, there is also a desire to find a place where I belong, and I'm still in search of the place, and I cannot answer it. So there is this wish to belong, but so far I'm still an outsider of everything, and I try to take it as a strength also, because sometimes you need to be outside in order to have a clearer perspective. But also what I miss is a platform, a home of sorts. And this is also partially why I'm creating right now a Center for Creative Arts for artists like myself, who do not fit into any pre-existing boxes, any groups, any old forms, in a way, who break the molds, because I think it's very essential for artists who are outsiders of all traditional forms, or who create work in different forms, or who have not found their place, and to have this platform that would allow them to not to feel so alone, to have support of their work, protection of their work, so it continues. It can be bridged for the next generations, and also protects the future of their works. And I think it's very much needed, because there are other artists who, like me, are outsiders of norms and pre-existing boxes. And so perhaps that foundation, this organization, will be a home, a platform that will allow me to feel more in peace, and will allow me also to give and to help others who are in similar situation.
I know we are coming up on the time. You have to go to Oxford. You have to go and do a presentation with your book. So I just want to make sure that we have enough time to wrap up.
Perhaps we can talk, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Well, you've left me
Eh,
speechless.
me too.
Sorry.
And Lera, that does not happen often, that nor Michelle or myself can say a word. I think you walked us through. I mean, Michelle, your turf is really risk, right? And predicting and making us aware of the gray rhino and everything that's coming towards us. And I'm so focused on, life quality, life design, and future of work and all of that. And I think, Lera, listen, you just nailed every single discipline along the whole spectrum of what we as humans are concerned about, or obsessed with, or thriving for, or longing for. I'm curious how you stay this pure. You have this divine creativity and beauty and this incredible productivity. So how do you stay pure yourself? Do you have like disciplines of not listening to the news, not reading newspapers, not being around toxic people? Do you drink some tea in the morning that's very special? How, Lera, are you doing this? How do you feed your soul so you can keep this output of incredible art?
It's a very beautiful question, and I wish I knew the answer. It's it's constant challenge, because there is, there is being an artist is a contradiction of sorts, because on one hand, you need to allow yourself being completely open, vulnerable, in order to be able to tune yourself to the energies you transmit. You're instrument of your time. So art exists in time. So we're all instruments of time. So you need to be able to be open and vulnerable and in a way fragile, because you're so open. But at the same time, you also need to have this some kind of a bubble around you, so that you can repel the things that can hurt you, because when you're very open, you also can be hurt very easily. And so it's a constant balance that I think artists have to face, and both are very important. And how do you create this bubble when you have to be completely transparent and open? And sometimes, you may receive some terrible news right before you have to go on stage. How do you deal with it? You have to. When you go on stage, you are there for that reason. You are there to give to the people in front of you, and you have to do your best. You have to put away your ego and whatever it is that is bothering you, because it will be on the way. So it's a little bit like being able to split yourself at a moment, and maybe to tell that part of you that is hurting, that is crying, I acknowledge you. I will come back to you. We can cry into the pillow together, but not now. Right now, I need to be very strong. I need to be very brave. I need to go and face these thousands of people, inspire them, do whatever. But I will come back to you. I know you there. So, and I think what's important is, and I've done this mistake in the past, is that part that hurts, to keep on putting it away and never acknowledging it. Because it starts rebelling, and it can rebel also, it can manifest in different ways because it's crying for your attention. And you can play a concert the next day to get sick, and that happens. You give everything, and then there is a big crash, and you're out of action for next 2 weeks. So I think it's very important to be aware of that part, to give it time and space. And this is also where visual art for me comes, because it is part of meditation. It's part of addressing that part, and part of saying, I know you are there, and we are going to transfer this into something beautiful. I'm not going to ignore you, but I'm going to transfer you. So, and I think it's something like that. But I would say the important part is not to just repress that part, but to give it space and time.
Lera, this is so beautiful. And you said something that's really stuck with me is, thinking of all the artistic and creative risks that you take, talking about really realizing what you're supposed to do and that it's bigger than you, sort of makes the risk all disappear. I want to close similar to the way we opened. I have your your earlier book in front of me, and I just randomly opened it to a page, and hopes are fears in disguise. And I think that's really a wonderful thing for our audience to take out into the world with them. You've given us so much food for thought, and people who don't know your work yet, I'm sure they've gotten a huge treat through the little snippets that we've gotten here. So thank you again. Thank you, Raphael, for being with us today and for all that you do behind the scenes. I've been so privileged to get to know you as well as Lera, and we'll have to get you back to Chicago again. I've put out some little, put some bugs in some people's ears. So anyway, we'll wrap up here, and thank you again. And I'm looking forward to reading the book and to your next premiere in Chicago, hopefully a world premiere, not just a US premiere.
And thank you, Michelle, for co-hosting today with me. And thanks to you, we have Lera today. And selfishly, I want her to Copenhagen first because I'm going to spend the summer here. So hopefully we'll do a little bit more of the Little Mermaid. But I want to say thank you. And I'm sure we could continue for hours. There's so much me from the business world could learn from you. And personally, what I think really provoke a lot of people is the anti-focus almost, right? You gave me so much because we keep telling people in business, but also in art, focus, get good at one thing, become the best in one thing, and you are really playing with life, right? And you challenge yourself. And the strongest image from today I will take away, there's many. Greenland was really up there, but it was you on the piano with your teacher and all your fellow students that was twice as old as you, and you were just going with it. That is so beautiful, so playful, and there's so much to be learned from that. So thank you, Lera, for being here today, and I wish you the best tonight where you're going to speak in Oxford about your book on your book tour, and then I know you're rushing on to other big stuff in your life, and you're such a precious soul. And it's been such a huge honor to interview what we believe is the greatest artists of our time. And there's so much we learned from you today. So thank you so much for staying with us today. And next time, Raphael, we will be interviewing the man behind the artist, the greatest artist of our time. So next time, because that's also a pair of shoes that cannot be easy to walk in around in. So thank you so much. Thank you, Lera. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you both of you, and it's such a pleasure to share.